Hi everyone, this is Suzanne Etkin, and I am going to pick up where Steve Robbie left off on behavior change to talk a little bit more about some of those communication tools, special communication tools that you might use to engage your audience. So once you've chosen a behavior and chosen an audience, like we practiced in class, and then you learn a little bit about your audience, it's time to select the right tools for the job. So just remember, information and education does not equal behavior change. So we're really looking at that segment of the population that just needs a little bit of help. They don't need to be convinced. They just need a little bit of help to make the change. So the first tool that I want to talk about is prompts. Steve talked a little bit about prompts in his presentation, but just a couple points about prompts that to build on what he said. So first of all, a prompt is a audio or visual cue to remind people about a behavior that they already intend to do. So it shouldn't explain about the behavior. It should not convince people to do the behavior. It just reminds people. So the prompt should be noticeable, it should be self-explanatory, and it should be simple. So this is not the time to use, like a catchy slogan. It's not the time to use some sort of analogy. Just the straight facts. Just tell people what to do. The other thing you want to do is make sure that it's used close in time and space to where the activity will or will not happen. So, for example, right next to the light switch is a good place for a turn off the light switch prompt. The idle-free zone in this slide, I believe, was placed in the drop-off lane. Where people are idling. So close in time and space to where the activity will or will not happen. And then the last thing is you really want to only encourage positive behaviors. Don't use a prompt to discourage negative behaviors, because what people will do, and studies have shown this, is they will just do the negative behavior. So this is the time to be positive. Commitment tools. Commitment tools are one of my very favorite tools. So commitments are when people are agreeing to do the behavior. They're most effective if they're written and public. So whether someone stands up at a community meeting and commits to something, or if you get them to sign a commitment and then you post those, everyone who has committed to a certain behavior, for example, on a Google map of your community. And you do have to get people's agreement to post that on, in the public venue. You don't actually technically have to get it, but it really helps you in your community if you're completely transparent about what you do with their information. So public commitments, public written commitments are really, really effective. And they're effective because people want to act in a way that is consistent with their own self-perception. So they're really, really good tools. The other thing is, agreeing to a very small commitment often leads to a larger commitment. So if your long-term goal is to get people to stop fertilizing, maybe you want to start with fertilize in the fall, if at all, and then move on to the stop fertilizing. So small commitments lead to bigger commitments. Okay, social norms and social diffusion. So this is just sort of using a group of people in your neighborhood to influence the bigger group in your neighborhood. So this is sort of what we're trying in Pines on the Severn, where we've done some training with a group of 15 people, and we're hoping that they will influence the larger group in their community. So people really want to be part of the pack. They want to be seen as the same as their neighbors. And so anytime that you can get a small group of people influencing the larger group, that's a great thing to take advantage of. Okay, communication tools. If you're sending a communication out, you really want to capture the attention. So unlike a prompt, this is something that doesn't have to be close in time and space to the behavior. It's more about convincing people that they want to take this action. So the message should be vivid, it should be concrete, and it should be specific to the target audience. So the target audience in this picture is white men who fertilize their own yards. So it should be easy to remember. The other thing about a communication is that it should be delivered by a credible source whenever possible. And the message is best delivered in person. So the credible source doesn't have to be you. It could be someone else in your neighborhood that, the person in your neighborhood who has this great green lawn that everybody respects what his lawn looks like would be a great person to deliver this particular message. Or to sign, if this card were being mailed out, a message from the person who has the great green lawn in the neighborhood saying, hey, I'd like all the neighbors to join me in understanding that we don't want to pollute our river, so let's not fertilize, or let's apply fertilizer correctly. So credible source is good. And then you can also use communications to provide feedback about that the impact of their behavior change is having. How many people have signed on, if there's a measurable change in water quality. You guys probably get feedback communications from the recycling division. In certain communities, they mail sort of how you're doing against your neighbors in your community or other communities. Sometimes the power company does this too with efficiency. Okay, and lastly, when you're engaging in communication, humor never hurts. So please do not drop cigarette butts on the deck. The fish call out at night to smoke, and we are trying to get them to quit. Someone who sees that is going to remember it. So humor is a great thing. Just a real quick case study. This is a group of watershed stewards up in Glen Burnie, very densely developed area, and they tested the water, and they found a high presence of bacteria. And the bacteria in that area was not coming from septics. There are no septics, and there wasn't any leaking sewer. And it's densely developed urban area, so it's not really wildlife. So pets are where that water quality bacteria was coming from. And so they tested the water, and this is what they found. So safe levels for bacteria are up to 104 colony-forming units per 100 milliliters in a single sample. So you can see that on some days they are many, 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 many times over that. And what they knew was happening, and what you can sort of see in this picture, is that a lot of the backyards drain down to the waterway. And they didn't see a lot of pet waste evidenced in the front yards, and so they knew that's probably what is happening. So they targeted an audience who were the pet owners whose backyards drained into the creek. So that's who they decided to try to reach. And they used a couple tools. So they used the Poopy Times, which was a newsletter, and the newsletter announced themselves. And the picture on there, 5 really friendly-looking young people who sort of represent the demographic of the area. That's who they are, so it's sort of peer-to-peer. And they also use the Poopy Times to convey the results of the water quality testing, and also let them know when the testing was going to happen, as a way of like, hey, make sure all your poop is picked up. Let's see if we can make a difference. So that was a piece of mail. They actually hard mailed that because they found out that their target audience really responds well to mail. In fact, when they did some canvassing, it was evident that most people had actually opened and read the Poopy Times, which was pretty amazing. They also used a prompt and a commitment. So the prompt, oh poop, don't forget your backyard, scoop it, bag it, trash it. So that's what we want them to scoop it, put it in a bag, and put it in the trash, specifically in the backyard. The door hanger that you see sort of features, and the pet waste both feature sort of this theme of being all-American. In that community, most people had a flag in their front yard, so the sort of American way really resonated with this community, and so they used those graphics. They also gave people information about how to contact them. They made a Gmail address. They had a Facebook. So, and the door hanger was left behind for people who were not home, and I think they left it also when people were home. And as they were canvassing door to door, there was a tear-off commitment at the bottom where people could make a commitment to pick up their pet waste in their backyard, and then they actually mapped everyone who had made the commitment. So a couple tools that I'm hoping you'll look at. On the WSA website, we have pages devoted to behavior change. So we hope you'll take a look at those. And then again, fostering sustainable behavior. Both of these were on the handout from the agenda from class, the last class, session 4. So particularly that Fostering Sustainable Behavior is a book written by Doug McKenzie Moore, and it's downloadable by chapters, and it's really, really accessible. It's a really easy read, and so I hope you will enjoy it. Thanks for listening.